of starting a management education, he started Chartered Financial Analyst as a course when there were very few chartered courses available at that point in time. And today when we name CFA, CFA had its own level and had its own mark. 1995, so he started management education, and since then it has been no looking back. What has been great, and under his leadership we had seen growth from last 20-25 years. I feel that I'm very lucky that I had an opportunity to meet him not once, twice, but 3 times. And I had an opportunity to visit his house. I would say that he was a man of very simple living, but with a very high thinking and high dreams. And today, all of us are reaping the benefit of the dream which he nurtured in the year 1985. And whenever we've been speaking, whenever we have been talking about him, whenever we have spoken about him, or whenever you meet his family, you meet his friends, they've only been talking about one thing, that he did not have 2 kids, but he had rather 3 kids. Because he has nurtured IBS, not only IBS, in fact, ICFI Foundation and the society as his 3rd child. So we are grateful, and I'm sure that, he's among us, he's watching us, he's listening to us, and at the same time, he's giving blessings on all of us. Sir, we assure you that we will be bringing growth and laurels to this institute. We will be, in fact, making these dreams big and big every year, every passing year. Thank you so much for giving me opportunity to speak on such a big day. And I would once again, welcome Dr. Arvind Sahai to be here. And we are grateful to you, sir, once again for accepting our invitation. And as I said earlier that, we are ready to have the many interactions with him, because we generally do not leave the academicians of that level to get great learning for us. Thank you so much. Thanks once again.
Thank you so much, Mark. I now request our Senior Director, sir, to offer his remembrance to late Sri NJY sir. Our Senior Director is an economist par excellence, having studied at Institute of Economic Growth, University of Delhi, Bath University in England, and University of Pennsylvania, USA. A former member of Indian Economic Services, sir, during his over half a century of distinguished career, was fortunate to work with some of India's greatest and eminent people like Mr. L.K. Jha, Mr. Krishnamurthy, and Dr. Manmohan Singh. He later played his part in shaping the destiny of the nation by teaching the IAS officers at LBS Academy, Mussoorie, and by heading various public sector corporate giants like SAIL and Woodco. And now he heads our campus for the last 10 years. Over to sir.
Dr. Arvind Sahai, chief guest for today's function, and friends. Dr. Rena has already welcomed Dr. Sahai, so I should not repeat. And Dr. Rena has also talked about Professor Yashasvi, so there is very little for me to say something without repeating. But I will not repeat. I have told myself. So first of all, Dr. Sahai, trust my words, my dear students, please listen to me carefully. He is a very profound professor who has understood the concept of integrated learning and who is manifesting his understanding of all the subjects, whether marketing, finance, accounting, economics, psychology, organizational behavior, everything. He has been able to make use of it, and if you want to experience it and enjoy it, go through his books. His latest book has come this year only, in 2023, And the book that I am referring to is 2022 publication, where, my dear students, please, बेटा ये तो बच्चे हैं, अभी ये बच्चे ही रहेंगे. I will request all my students to please discriminate, develop a sense of discrimination, where to indulge into indiscipline, where to avoid indiscipline. It is very important. So I was telling that, have a look at that book. He is defining branding. Branding means capturing the imagination of the customer. Branding means entering the brain of the customer. That is the title of the book. If you have captured somebody's imagination and somebody's thought process, what more is to be captured? So the book is the best example of highly integrated learning. That is the role of a teacher or a faculty in a business school. Dr. Sahai sir, we are very grateful to you for having found time, and it's a matter of great honor. We will request you some other day to come and deliver your talk more on the subject than on the ceremony. Now, coming to Professor Yashasvi, as I said, Dr. Rana has already said many things, so I don't have to repeat. I will tell some of his personal qualities, which I observed myself, or I have heard from others who are authentic people. He was a unique teacher. He flooded his son with books. Best of the autobiographies of the world, he will bring and tell his children, his child, his son, to go through it. He will ask them fundamental questions. Supposing the Britishers had not left India, would India be a better country? Next day he will ask, if we have to control the imports of goods and services into India, should we ban these products administratively or deal with them by raising the custom duty? This is how he was teaching his son. I asked my driver, the one who is driving, who has driven Dr. Sahai today, has also driven Professor Yashasvi. So I asked him, how do you recall Professor Yashasvi? My driver, I asked him. He says, sir, I always felt honored because he never sat at the back seat. He was sitting next to me. See now, this is the value system. This is how you influence people. He was always sitting. He never liked smoking, but he had friends who smoked. So he will ask them, do you want to smoke? He will stop the car. Wherever they were going. You go, 10 minutes, you go and smoke. Highly sensitive to colleagues. Highly sensitive to his environment. He used to attend the classes of other professors. Now this is the beauty. How many of us as faculty members are attending classes of each other? First of all, the professor himself can take objection. Number two, somebody will say, why has he to go? Does he not know the same subject as he is learning from the others? But he used to attend the classes of other professors. So this was the great man. 11 universities, of course, he set up. So you can see the names that Rana mentioned. Bombay, Bangalore, Pune, Gurgaon basically means Delhi, Jaipur, Dehradun. But then Manipur, Tripura, Nagaland, Meghalaya, and Jharkhand. These are also the places. So he believed in Say's law, actually, if you ask me, which basically said supply creates its own demand. provide supply, demand will come. Generally, what the businessman does is, they wait for the demand to exist. Here was a man who always felt that supply should be in excess of the demand, so that there is never a shortage of any product or service. He proved it by setting up these institutions, and some of them which did not do well, it were closed. So he never hesitated to close. He experimented. And the result is that the institution is flourishing. More than 65,000 students. Imagine 65, more than 65 actually. Around 68,000 students. Each student is having at least 5 family members. So imagine now 60 into 5, how much it comes to? Several lakh people. And how many people are getting their livelihood because of him directly? Those who are in the faculty, staff, marketing staff, and so on and so forth. So a great man, great imagination. He was very frugal in his habits. I have seen his room in the Hyderabad. It is that room is only 1/4 of my room here. For directors, he created beautiful rooms, but for himself, he created small rooms, virtually with no furniture. So that was the kind of value system he represented. Very humble, actually. And I think these are the things which I have observed, or others have observed and shared. So friends, great man by any measure, by any standard. We are privileged actually to be serving in this great institution, and it has a bright future, I can assure you. So Doctor, with these words, once again, sir, I extend a very warm welcome to you, and look forward to meet you as often as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I now invite Udit to introduce the chief guest to our audio-visual presentation.
Dr. Sai sir is an outstanding teacher, researcher, and consultant with extensive experience in industry as a manager, consultant, and corporate trainer. Sir has held several leadership positions in academia as Dean, Alumni, and External Relations, Chairperson PGPX, Executive Education and Marketing Area at IIM Ahmedabad. In December 2016, Sir was appointed as the Professor M.N. Hora Chair of Marketing. In December 2019, he was appointed as the founding chair of the NSC Center for Behavioral Science, first at a management institution. On October 17, 2023, Sir has been appointed as the director in the prestigious NJY Gurgaon. Sir did his BTech from IIT Kanpur, MBA from Ahmedabad, and doctorate from Texas McCombs School of Business in USA. Sir has written 60 cases and 34 referred journals articles in leading international outlets. He is a recipient of University Vice Distinction Award at the University of Texas at Austin, the winner of the Innovation in Teaching Award at London Business School, the Devang Mehta Best Teacher in Marketing Management, and the UTV Bloomberg Award for the Best Marketing Professor. In March 2016, Sir was appointed as Chair, India Gold Policy Center, an independent research think tank at IIM Ahmedabad. Sir is an independent director on the board of directors of 4 private and 2 publicly listed companies, and has more than 35 years of boardroom exposure. Sir has written a book, Brands and the Brain, with was published by Penguin in 2022 and is an Amazon bestseller. IBS Gurgaon is extremely proud of having sir as the chief guest for the 12th NJY Memorial Lecture today.
Thank you, Udit. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now welcome with huge admiration and respect our chief guest of the day, Dr. Alvin Sahai, and an academician par excellence, to deliver the 12th NJSSV lecture, commemorative lecture, please. Over to you, sir.
So while the setup is taking place, let me get started. Why was that changed? So if you're wondering why an engineer and an MBA is doing neuromarketing, my PhD was primarily in the area of applications of behavioral psychology to problems in marketing, pricing and branding. And after doing that for sometime around 2011, I think started thinking about, what is next. And if you think about psychology, psychology is all between our 2 ears, and between our 2 ears is our brain. And the brain is 100 billion neurons. And beginning around the mid-90s, the research on neuroscience has just exploded. So we understand a lot more about how our brain works based on the research in the last 25 years. So in 2011-12, started working on trying to understand neuroscience. And in 2012, started the first course on neuroscience and consumer behavior. So it was a learning process for me and my students. It took around 2 or 3 years before the course kind of stabilized. So one of the privileges that one has as a professor is that you get to try out new stuff. So by around 2014-15, the course had stabilized. In 16-17, we rolled it out for corporates also. So from 2017, we had a neuroscience and marketing course for managers, and that had been running for about 5 years. And in 19, so one started doing some research also. If you're teaching something, it kind of makes sense to create some new stuff that you can teach, makes life more exciting. So initially, if you wanted to collect data from the brain, we didn't have any instruments, so we had to go to other places. So there's a National Brain Research Center in Manesar near here. We'd come here a couple of times to collect data. We went to Allahabad. And after some time, you can't be going around the country just to collect data. So we were able to set up our own lab at Ahmedabad. So 2019, NSC gave us some money to set up our own lab. And from that time onwards, we've been doing our own research over there. Of course, now that I've moved to NJY Gurgaon, the lab is also moved. The lab should be set up in about a month's time from now. We should be up and running at NJY Gurgaon. So that's a little bit of history about my journey. It has applications in all places. You can apply it in marketing for doing advertising testing. If you're a company that has come up with new advertisements, if you give an advertisement to you give a creative brief to a company and say, generate some advertisements, they will give you 2 or 3 alternatives. So you can test which one is actually having a larger impact in the brain. Similarly, if you are a large corporate and you are having problems of employee retention and you want to roll out some schemes to reduce the attrition, and you have 2 or 3 different schemes. So you want to figure out which one will work better. Again, you can create visuals of the schemes and you can test which one is going to work better. So we actually did this project for a large corporate where they came up with 4 different alternatives on what they wanted to roll out as interventions to increase retention. And then they also had a small survey within the company to figure out which one is likely to work better. So this was a normal survey where you ask questions to people. So the survey told them that alternative 3 might work better. But this company was there on the campus and we started talking to some managers. So I told them the lab exists and they said, okay, why don't we do it in the lab also? So the lab showed that, so you have this piece of equipment where you put a cap on top, detects the brain waves in your head. So the lab showed that it was not alternative 3 that people were talking about, but it was alternative 1 that was actually the most attractive. So it actually sees inside, the process allows you to see inside the head. Which brings us to the topic, of marketing and overview of an emerging science. How we kind of want to look at it. So it allows us to see inside the head. So what I want to start out with is by kind of sharing with you the thought that sometimes our brain behaves in ways that we are not completely aware of. So as you look at this picture, right? How many of you guys, what do you guys see? Triangle. What else? Star. What else?
You see blocks,
Blocks. What blocks?
different 3 blocks.
So there are 3 what we call as Pac-Mans. Some of us might have played that game, Pac-Mans.
3 patterns,
Yes, and 3 blocks and 3 angles.
3 angles.
Right. So actually, what is there are 3 Pac-Mans and 3 angles. But even after I have told you this, your eye and your brain is telling you that there are some triangles and stars. Yes, all of us will still be able to see some triangles and stars. So our brain is showing us something that is not there. I will repeat that. Our brain is showing us something that is not there. We are seeing something that is not real. So I want you to keep this in mind as we go along. Next. So from a brand perspective, therefore, as a marketer, that's an interesting thought for me, right? I will see stuff that's not there. So in our minds, we see stuff in 3 areas: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. The hindbrain is the back of our heads. And it is the part which holds a lot of our unconscious memories. So a lot of you guys would have seen the movie Ghazni. Yes? So Ghazni ko saab ko kya problem tha, Mr. Singhania, in that movie? He can't remember new things. Right? So if you meet him and you talk to him, and then you go away and come back after 2 hours, he has no memory of having met you, because he can't remember new stuff. But if I pretend for the moment that Professor Venkatraman here is Mr. Singhania, right, who has this problem with the head, will allow me to.
I already have.
So if I go and shake his hand, and I have this pen in my hand, right, and this is sharp, and I shake his hand, I poke him, right? So when I poke him with it, it causes pain. But because he is a Mr. Singhania, when I go away, he has no memory. When I come back after some time, he has no memory that I poked him. But this time, if I reach out and want to shake hands again, he doesn't want to shake hands with me. You ask him why, and he has no clue. Because he has no conscious memory. But his unconscious mind remembers that this is the same fellow who came in, poked me in my hand. Right? So your back of your head, the hindbrain, is the seat of a lot of our unconscious memories. And we are all walking around with a lot of these memories, which influence our behavior, which, by the way, is very interesting to me as a marketer. I would like to understand the nature of some of these unconscious memories. The midbrain is the part where our conscious memory works. This is the part of the brain that Ghazni had damaged. That's why he couldn't form fresh memories. And the forebrain that we normally think about, which makes us humans, the most advanced living creature on the planet, is the forebrain, where we do our conscious reasoning, logic, and so on. That's the forebrain that you see up there in the front. So that's just to set the stage as to a little bit about a peek into the working of the brain. And so therefore, so what does it mean for the brain? So this is what we want to do in the next half an hour or so. I will take you through how the brand kind of lives in the brain, how the brain functions, what are brain operating rules, and how we use our memory, and what are some tools, neuro tools, EEG, fMRI, and so on, that we use to try and understand decision making in the brain. So if you look at the brand, that's one way of looking at the brand. It's a name, it's a logo, it's a color. It's also, it does something from me. If I buy a Hyundai Creta, it carries me from point A to point B at 16 kilometers to a liter. It does something for me. I feel attached to the brand. Yes. How many people here feel attached to their brands? Yes. So I have an emotion. I actually ascribe emotion to a brand, even though it's not a living person. By the way, this is a phenomenon that's happened in the last 50-60 years, where we feel attached to brands. आजकल ज़माना ऐसा हो गया है when we पहले ज़माने में we used to love people and use things. Now we love things and use people. Right? So the last one is where you have a long-term attachment to a brand. You actually feel something is missing if the brand is not there. A lot of people, they're so attached to the brand, if it's not there, you feel that something's actually missing. So that's how the brand functions in our head. And the key idea for us, for me as a marketing professor, is that a brand is what it makes you feel inside, in your head. And now there is evidence. Yes. If you are in the presence of a liked brand, suppose I'm really attached to my shoes, or to my particular dress, or with a particular brand, I'm really attached to it. In the presence of that brand, that part of my head, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex over here, which processes emotions, becomes a lot more active. Equally interesting, that part of my head which processes logic and reasoning becomes less active. So literally, physiologically, a good, powerful brand makes us behave more emotionally and less logically. There is a biological evidence now, and plenty of it. It's not just me saying it. There are many other people, beginning from around 2004 till very recently, lots of people in different contexts, beverages, cars, dresses, food, lots of different brands where they have shown this happen. So it's a fairly well-established fact empirically. And so therefore a brand needs to feel in a certain way, which then brings us into the brain. Okay, so if that's what a brand is, how does the brain actually work to process brands? So if you look at how the brain works to process brands, essentially what I talk about in the brain, next please, is these 5 ways that the brain has to work. I call them brain operating principles, so distillation of the last 10 years of my work in the area, and a lot of other people who have worked in the area, that brain uses these 5 principles. It wants to feel good, secure, etc., wants patterns, looks for contrasts, tries to conserve energy, and mirrors other things. So what are each one of those? We'll look at these in a little more detail. So what does feel good or secure mean? So, we all want to feel good, we all want to feel secure. From a neuromarketing perspective, what does it mean? So it turns out that what these correspond to is neurotransmitters in the brain. How many people here have heard dopamine, serotonin? Yes. So these are neurotransmitters in the head, right? We now know that there are more than 300 of them. We understand the functioning of about 20. And dopamine and serotonin are the 2 most important. So as human beings, we want to feel good. How do we feel good? How do we feel secure? We feel good or we feel secure when there is more dopamine or there is more serotonin. Security is serotonin, dopamine is feel good, excited, and so on. In earlier days, this dopamine or serotonin would come from food or shelter or clothing. Now it comes from products and brands. So literally, physiologically, if I buy one brand over the other brand, that brand is giving me a higher shot of dopamine or serotonin than the other brand, depending on what it is that's driving my behavior. So when I want to feel more secure, it is serotonin which will drive my behavior. And so the brand which is able to influence the level of serotonin in my head is the one that I will prefer. If I'm looking for excitement, then the brand that drives dopamine will drive my behavior. If I'm looking for togetherness, the brand that drives oxytocin or vasopressin will drive my behavior. Right? So in a sense, our behavior is biological. Next. Our behavior is biological, and you can map these objectives that the brain has to different neurotransmitters. And some marketers now have started using this stuff, some of the large companies, as to how to influence behavior, and their marketing campaigns will now try to figure out, what is it amongst the segments of customers, which segment is trying to look at, which segment's behavior is driven by which particular driver of behavior, dopamine, serotonin, etc., and therefore, how does the stimuli that I create influence the behavior? So that's the first step that we do. Something like, HDFC Life, Sarv Bhake Jio, dignity in your life, in your older age. The serotonin-driven behavior is what HDFC Life is going for. Next, please. So this is a company that I have worked with for a while. It makes motorbikes. The first bike will roll out in about a month's time, 40,000 bookings and so on. Electric bicycle, motorcycle. The interesting thing is the design. Right? If I had not told you that it's an electric motorcycle, how many of you would have thought that it's an electric motorcycle? Yes, it looks and feels like a normal performance bike, and it's deliberately designed to be so because it should look and feel like that. But more interestingly, this electric motorcycle has gears. Now, how many electric two-wheelers in this country, or actually anywhere in the world in the 100, 200 cc category, how many of them have gears? No, none of them. This bike is targeted at people who would otherwise buy Pulsars and Apaches. People here drive Pulsars and Apaches. I think the younger ones probably might be. Right? So, if I'm buying a Pulsar or Apache, what is one of the key drivers of my behavior, my purchase behavior? I want the excitement, I want the feel of throttling through the gears. 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm revving the bike, I'm pressing the gears. Does it influence my behavior? Yes, it does. Can I show it over here? Yes, I can show it in your head. And so therefore, based on these insights, the company actually invests money in putting in a gearbox in an electric vehicle. It increases your cost, but you get two benefits. The first benefit is that you are not tapping into buyer behavior. And the second benefit is that because you are putting in a gear, what happens to the range of your battery? It increases. Why does it increase? Because what does the gear do? It optimizes the draw of power from the engine source. Right? जब आप first gear में हो, तो ज़्यादा power लेता है. जब आप fourth gear में हो, तो कम power लेता है. So when you have a gear, it optimizes the draw of power from the battery, and so therefore the range of the battery increases. So now, for the same 5 kilowatt hour battery, you are providing a higher range. Right? So product design can also be influenced. You are providing a larger shot of dopamine to the customer by an element of product design. Let me just skip this and go on. So we choose brands that give us more of the neurotransmitters that we want. A mix of neurotransmitters that a person wants is a function of their personality, more time of day. So some of us are risk takers, we will respond more to dopamine. Some of us are people who want to minimize the downside, we will respond more to serotonin. The second idea in terms of biobehavior and in terms of how the brain works is the idea that our brains are designed to conserve energy. Our brain is 2% of body weight, but 25% of energy consumption. And please remember, all that energy is getting consumed inside a very small area. So अगर आप सोचें कि the equivalent of a 40-watt bulb, which is what 25% of your energy is constantly burning in your head, आपका literally भेजा fry हो जाता है. Yes, I think a 40-watt bulb we're doing there, but 40 watts is what is getting consumed. So how does the brain manage to keep homeostasis, constant temperature? It tries to reduce energy consumption. How does it reduce energy consumption? By not doing more energy intensive activities. What is the most energy intensive activity that a brain does? That is the outcome. But in terms of activity, what is the most energy intensive activity for a brain? Students, the students should be able to tell me, क्योंकि उनसे यही बोला जाता है. Thinking, right? Thinking, constant, deliberate thinking is the most energy intensive activity of the brain. Brain doesn't like to do it. Yes, as teachers, we know that quite well. Yes, students don't like to think. But as teachers, it is our job to make them think, to make that a habit. So the brain has an automatic tendency not to do thinking. It doesn't want to do that energy intensive activity. Conscious, deliberate thinking is not what it wants to do. It pushes stuff into the unconscious. Unconscious is a lot more efficient. Yes, we are all programmed to do stuff unconsciously. We drive a car unconsciously. When we go for our grocery shopping on a weekly basis, 90% of it is already there, automatic. We don't think too much. छोटे-मोटे चीजें के लिए we will think, but otherwise we don't think too much. So our brain is designed to conserve energy. If that is the case, then that makes it a problem for a new brand. I'm trying to sell a new brand of motorcycle. The brain of the customer does not want to think too much. So I have to figure out a way to get into the conscious and unconscious mind of the customer. How do I do it? If the brain is consuming energy. So one of the key parts for a marketer to think about at product launch time, at product rejuvenation time, brand launch time, brand rejuvenation time is whether I'm going after the conscious or the unconscious. And you should be, especially for those of you guys who are in the marketing specialization, Udit here told me, Udit here told me that he's doing finance specialization, but for those of you guys who are doing marketing specialization, you should be evaluating messages to understand whether it is targeted at your conscious and unconscious. And there is a mix in most messages. Some of it is targeted at your unconscious. And you have to understand why it is targeting the unconscious, how it is targeting the unconscious, and how that helps that particular brand. So this brand, Matter Motor Works, Matter Data is the brand. It is not a known name. In the target customer now, many people know it, some people still don't know it. And it has deployed a particular approach to get into the minds of the people because you're not a known name. People don't want to think too much. They feel secure buying a Pulsar or an Apache. This is a new brand. Why should I? It makes me feel uncomfortable. Will it perform? Battery जो है overheat करके जल जाएगा, ये हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा. How do I get into the mind? How do I push the person to spend the energy, brain energy that he needs to spend to get to know the product and simultaneously appeal to the unconscious? So in a sense, we will choose brands that ceteris paribus require lower energy consumption. And then the next two are the most interesting to me, which is what we call as patterns and contrasts. Our brain is wired to see patterns, to look for patterns, to create patterns, groups, categorization, even when they are not there. Why were you seeing that triangle? It is a pattern that exists in your head. Your brain wants to see the pattern. It is going to create that pattern, even though it doesn't exist. Right? Because that's the way the brain is designed. As soon as I see the pattern, what happens in my head? I feel sure, I feel certain. When I feel sure and I feel certain, what happens? My serotonin level goes up. I feel secure. And then I spend less energy also. क्योंकि मुझे मालूम है ये तो triangle है. I don't have to spend more energy to understand what it is. Right? So we are wired to see patterns. We are wired to see a pattern even when it is not there. Now this has interesting implications for a brand. I'm a new brand that is trying to get into the brain of a person who has an existing pattern of thinking about brands in that category. So if I want my bike, Matter Era, to get into the brain of the customer who's going to buy a Pulsar or an Apache, how do I fit into the pattern that is already existing and at the same time be different? Right? Does the brain want difference? Yes, it wants the difference also. Can we skip two? One more. So it wants the difference also. Another one. Please keep going. Keep going. So it wants the difference, right? We pay attention to something that's different. So for this bike, for instance, the pattern is that it looks and feels like a Pulsar or an Apache. The difference is that it's got a gear despite being an electric bike. The difference is that it has a active liquid cooling system, which is again a first in the category. Nobody else has it in this category. 100, 200 cc bikes में किसी के पास अभी liquid cooling नहीं है. So this bike is having a liquid cooling system that allows it to remain cool even in the hot Indian summer. Right? अगर आप Indian summers को देखें बाहर, अगर आप गुड़गांव में या अहमदाबाद में, where I come from, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a hot May day, घर के अंदर आपका temperature without the AC might be 45, 47. बाहर 3 बजे अगर आप जाइएगा, then under the open sun it is 53, 55. If your bike or scooter is parked at that temperature, electric bike with a battery, then one of two things is going to happen. Either the battery performance will degrade, which is almost a certainty, or it will catch fire. Yes. Because most of the earlier two-wheelers which have been designed for Western Europe, Northeast China, where the temperatures are much lower. So a cooling system over here is required. It's a natural differentiator, and hopefully it works. So you design the cooling system to take care of the of a fear that is there and as a differentiator. I don't know whether I have the Vicky Kaushal video over here. Can you go to the next one? Next. Let's see if this works. Click on it. Go out of the presentation mode and click on it. Exit the presentation mode and click on it. You're not in presentation mode? Not working. Take a forget it. Move on. And so here is the conundrum especially for marketing people. The brain wants patterns and it wants contrasts, both at the same time. My challenge as a marketing guy is how to appear fitting into an existing pattern that is there in the mind of the customer, and at the same time be different enough in a meaningful, relevant way that allows me to claim some product superiority, that allows me to claim a meaningful difference that is of relevance to the customer. Next. The last one is, so we have covered so far. The first one was, feel good, feel secure, which is about dopamine, serotonin, save energy, pattern, contrast. And this is about mirroring. So we are designed to mirror, right? This little infant, about 8 months old, is imitating something that it's watching on the screen, right? What is it imitating? Anybody? Who's into rock music? रॉक म्यूजिक में कोई नहीं है आप लोग? ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है? गंगनम स्टाइल का नाम सुना? ये गंगनम स्टाइल जो है टीवी पे देख रहे हैं, 8 महीने के बच्चे हैं और उसको इमिटेट कर रहे हैं, right? It turns out that we are wired to imitate. Yes. When we see somebody doing something in front of us, the same neurons fire in your head, right? Abhi jaise, for example, if I start doing this, I'm throwing this up and I'm catching it, and you are watching me do this, right? The same neurons that I'm using to throw it up and catch it are firing in your heads. We are wired to imitate. This is the basis of all influencer marketing. आजकल इन्फ्लुएंसर मार्केटिंग उसको बोलते हैं, वो कमाने से होता है. But mirroring is the basis of influencer marketing, and so therefore one of the challenges for us is, how do you line up the influencers? Which is the influencer that will appeal to which part of my target segment of customers that people are more likely to imitate. And so these are the 5 key main operating principles that drive our behavior. So from a product adoption perspective, from a brand management perspective, we want to be able to choose the brands that satisfy these 5 different things. Carry on. So that's the summary of what I've talked about so far. Next please. And so therefore, what do we do with this in terms of decision making and brands? Next. We look at the memory and we look at how we make decisions. So what it boils down to therefore is, going back to the early part of my talk, how much of the decision making that is happening in my brain based on these 5 ideas is conscious, how much of it is unconscious, how much of it is driven by reason, how much of it is driven by emotion. And the interesting thing, if you look at this slide, is that, and by the way, I'm not saying this, there's a whole bunch of other people who are saying this, that a reasonably large proportion of our behavior is driven by our unconscious. Some of it is reason, some of it is emotion, but it is unconscious. And so therefore, for a brand marketer, that makes life a little tough. It also makes life a little more interesting, because if you don't have a challenge, then life is not that interesting. Next, please. I'm going to skip this part and go into the last part of this brain thing before we go into the tools, which is memories. So we also work on memories. We all carry memories. We talked about Ghazni and his unconscious memories. I'm just going to talk about one particular dimension. Next. So this is a whole bunch of stuff over here. Just focus on the right side, non-declarative procedural memory. Right? This is an unconscious memory that we carry around. How many of you guys remember seeing the Cadbury's advertisement, "Kuch meetha ho jaye"? याद है? तो उसमें एक बड़ा अच्छा कैंपेन था. वो एक 18 साल का लड़का जो है, he is approaching similar age girl at a bus stop. The girl is eating a chocolate, and the boy tells the girl, will you give me a piece of the chocolate? तो वो लड़की जो है घूम के देखती है उसके तरफ, डू आई नो यू? नो वी डोंट. तो फिर मैं आपको चॉकलेट क्यों दूं भाई, मैं आप जान ना पहचान. तो बॉय सेज वेरी नाइसली कि मेरी माँ कहती है कि कुछ शुभ काम शुरू करने के पहले कुछ मीठा हो जाना चाहिए. So the girl kind of grimaces, and then she very reluctantly takes out a piece of chocolate and gives it to him. उसके बाद she gets curious. And she says, भाई कौन सा शुभ काम करने जा रहे हो? So now our boy comes with his nice line and says, मैं सोच रहा था कि I'll walk you home. Very nice pickup line, right? Yes. तो sometimes I wish मुझे ये कोई बताया होता when I was 40 years younger. But where is the memory over here? What memory is that Cadbury's chocolate advertisement playing on? What is the unconscious procedural memory that it is playing on? We all grow up in a certain way, right? कि on happy occasions, on auspicious occasions, मिठाई खाते हैं. पहले हम लोग जब ट्रैवल करते थे तो माँ बोलती थी वो मीठा करो. We all grow up with it. It's an unconscious procedural memory. It's almost a ritual. We behave automatically in that way. We don't think about it. What is this chap trying to do? वो आपके वो unconscious procedural actions जो है उसमें जो है Cadbury's को घुसा रहे हैं. And they are doing it in a way that makes it very natural. If you are an 18-year-old boy or a girl, it seems very natural. Why not? And इनके बहुत सारे उसमें advertisements हैं. There is a husband and wife. There is a husband and wife with a kid. There is a husband and wife with a grandparent also. अलग-अलग context में जो है ये आपको messaging कर रहे हैं. But it's all targeted at getting into your unconscious memory, putting that brand into your unconscious procedural memory. So what are you doing when it gets into your unconscious procedural memory? And in the procedural memory, when it gets into there, you're secure. It's something that you do automatically all the time. So it is not disturbing your serotonin levels. You are right there. The difference is that it allows you, if you're a boy or a girl, oh, this is a nice way to get to meet a girl, get to make friends. Or vice versa for the girl with the boy. So unconscious memories are something that brands use to try and influence us. And so therefore, for us, this combination of brain operating principles, feel good, feel secure, conserve energy, patterns, contrasts, mirror neurons, then the way that the brain works to make decisions, conscious, unconscious, reason and emotion, and what memory you are using to bring all of these together, and you get it right, and suddenly you have a nice product design, or a nice advertisement, or a nice packaging, or a nice way of putting together an employee retention scheme, and so on. Next. I'm going to skip this. By the way, just go back 1 second. For those of you who are interested, these are two very, very famous campaigns. One is a Samsung service advertisement which dates back to December 2016, and the other is a Gillette campaign which took place around 2 years ago, 21 now, yeah, 2 years ago in South Africa. And both of them are fantastic illustrations of some of the ideas that one is talking about. Next. So the last part is, okay, all this is great, but how does one do it? What are some tools that one deploys to actually do it? And so if you go to the tools part, I'm just going to talk about this one tool in some detail. There are many tools. You have EEG, you have fMRI, you have galvanic skin response meter, you have eye tracker, you have face tracking. So these are the primary tools. Then on the secondary side, you have transcranial magnetic stimulation, you have TMS, you have positron emission tomography, whole bunch of stuff. But the workhorse today is the EEG plus eye tracker. So EEG is what I'm going to spend most of my time, the next 5 or 7 minutes. I will talk about the EEG. So what is the EEG? The EEG is essentially a set of electrodes which is fitted to a cap that sits on your head, and it detects your brain waves. Our brains are electrochemical factories, right? Electricity is literally flowing through our brain at 0.4 millivolt, sorry, plus minus 0.4 millivolt. Electricity is flowing. So when electricity is flowing, electricity will have, for those of us who are engineers, amplitude, frequency, and voltage. So what this measures is the amplitude, frequency, and voltage of the electricity that's flowing in your brain at particular points of your brain. So the cap has electrodes. It will have 32 electrodes, 64 electrodes, 128 electrodes. And the electrode over here, the frontal pole electrode over here, this measures the amplitude, frequency, and voltage right over here. So right over here is your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. So it is measuring the way in which the logical part of your brain is working, and so on. So each electrode will be at a particular point of your brain, and it measures that. Now, over the last 25 years, almost 30 years now, I said to you that research in neuroscience has expanded. So neuroscience gives us a map that if this part of your head is becoming active, yes, and a certain waveform is coming from this part of your head, then it means this. So for example, if you get what is known as an N170 wave coming from your frontal pole, right over here, it means that your brain wants to go towards that stimuli. By the same token, if from the frontal pole you're getting a P200 waveform, it means that your brain wants to go away from the waveform. Similarly, if you're getting theta waves from the back of your head, it means that you're actually paying attention, right? Sometimes we may be looking at someone, but my mind may be somewhere else. So gaze is not necessarily 100% indicator of attention, but the brain wave coming from the back of the head, that's definitely 100% indication of attention. So I can measure all of those things using an EEG, and the example that I gave you of employee retention basically came from an EEG experiment that we did. So that's your EEG. This is the workhorse. Next. People have done some studies, so people have actually predicted viewership of movies based on the brainwaves from the trailers. Next. So that's a couple of projects that the Tata Power project is completed. The OAP project is in line. OAP is this billboards company and so on. And we are in talks with a fashion brand and a leading bank and actually a hotel company also. So hopefully we'll get to do more such projects which allow us to use these kind of tools to actually solve real life business problems for companies. Next. So for the Tata Power project, the idea was to look at these 4 pillars. One is growth, sustainability and opportunity. Which pillar is most preferred? Carry on. So these were the metrics that we had: attention, effort, engagement, approach, withdrawal. And we also used the eye tracker in this case. And based on this, we constructed a metric, next, to show that it is one alternative which is actually working better than the other alternatives. Next. Yeah, carry on, please. And then there is another large IT firm where we were comparing face-to-face versus online and so on. So what is it used in advertising testing, retail format testing, and so on? Go back, please. Comparing formats, decision-making, correlation models of stimulus response, and so on. So I hope this gives you a flavor for the work that I'm doing. I'm quite excited about this work because I think in the next 10 years or 15 years of management education, there will be 2 principal pillars of endeavor that will drive forward a lot of the content and the pedagogy that we use in management education. One is pure technology, so artificial intelligence and cloud and blockchain and analytics and all of those technologies. And the other is behavior, human behavior. So this side is the human behavior side, where we are using EEG and AI and fMRI and others to understand human behavior and to then be able to leverage human behaviors. Management is partly about leveraging human behavior. And the other side is technology. So management graduates need to understand and be able to use technology. And so going forward, I think these are the 2 pillars, and it's my privilege to be involved in one pillar. And I hope to be able to continue to work in this area. As I said earlier, that I have the lab, which is now going to become functional at NJY Gurgaon. We've ordered the equipment. I'm hoping that by the end of December, the lab should be functional. So those of you guys who want to be respondents as a start, you're more than welcome to come. Once you have been there, then you can come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sahai. That was truly an outstanding address. May I request all to put your hands together for the guest. May now invite Senior Director Sir to present a memento to the Chief Guest as a token of our love and respect. Thank you, sir. We are coming to the end of the day's program, and it is time for proposing the word of thanks. As we draw the curtains down on this 12th memorial lecture in honor of our mentor,